Welcome to Oregon Indie Film, a video podcast that shines the light on Oregon's independent film industry. I'm your host, Dawn Sellers. I interview Oregon's independent filmmakers who offer insights into the creative process, challenges, and triumphs of making movies in Oregon. My guest on this episode is Nisha Burton, a filmmaker, speaker, and creative director. Nisha has a skilled cinematic eye, blending animation, digital effects, emerging technology, and cinematography. Nisha has made many films about Oregon history. Her documentaries are based on social and human issues. We'll talk about her film, Over the Kitchen Table, a short film that is close to her heart as it shares the story of her mother, Norma Burton, and her role as a founder of Tulsa, Oklahoma's first women's shelter in 1975. I hope you enjoy this episode of Oregon Indie Film. Welcome to the Oregon Indie Film Podcast. I am here today with my guest, Nisha Burton, to talk about her latest film, Over the Kitchen Table, which is an incredibly inspiring film about her mother, Norma Burton, and the story of how Norma founded Tulsa, Oklahoma's first battered women's shelter in 1975. And I watched the film and I was absolutely blown away. It's such an inspiring story of how we got where we are today. Um, so welcome, Nisha, and I'll just have you launch into who you are and what you do.
Yes, thank you for having me. So, my name is Nisha Burton, and I am a longtime filmmaker. I have been making films since I was very young. I actually begged my mom when I was 8 years old to get a VHS camera so I could record my Barbie dolls
Oh,
and
I
the
love
little
that.
films I made with them. So she was always very supportive of my filmmaking career. And then in high school, took a lot of classes in film, was able to have my films in film festivals already when I was a high school student. Went on to study film in college, first at Bard College and then the University of Oregon. And it has been such a long time passion of mine because it does merge many art forms and mediums, and I've always been an artist. And also the potential for film to really reach people's hearts and to tell stories that can create actual change. So, documentary as a genre of filmmaking has been one that I've really specialized in, telling people's true stories and especially looking at the histories that exist in our world. And because I've lived in Oregon for a long time, a lot of Oregon's history. And how those histories can impact our current day. So, for example, some past films I worked on looked at Oregon's unfortunate history as an exclusionary state that was
Mhm.
set up to be a white utopia of
Yeah,
sorts,
yeah.
and how that impacts people of color's experience currently in
Yeah.
Oregon, and especially how there's a narrative around, oh, it's just a coincidence that Oregon is this way. But then once you learn the history, it makes so much more sense. And it's not about just stopping there. Once we can learn the history and know it, then we can see better pathways forward to shift and move in directions that we want to. So, for this current project that we're talking about, that's a deeply personal one because it's about my mom's history and her work with the battered women's movement. There is a similar thread of how there are these parts of history that are intentionally covered up, buried, hidden,
Mm.
not taught in school. But there's a great power there, and the power of how the battered women's movement, which evolved into the domestic violence prevention movement that exists today, how it started as a really grassroots effort of people meeting in their homes, establishing these safe places, and then changing the very fabric of our society by being able to put laws in place and by being able to create safety for women and children and people who were being abused in their homes. So, knowing the history is so important, and when it gets erased or we forget it, then we kind of, one, take for granted where we are currently, but also our current times can feel even more hopeless because we don't see how people came up against the exact same or even bigger issues in the past and were able to move through to a more positive future.
Yeah, I think, your mom covers that a bit in the film and how, people try to hide things that have happened in the past, in hopes that they will just go away and that, but it is so important that we learn from our history. I'm a huge history fan as well. And where did you go to high school?
I went to high school in Ashland.
Oh, in
Like you
Ashland.
said, I've lived in Oregon most of
Yeah.
my life, and so
Yeah.
Southern Oregon is where I am currently
Oh,
too.
you're in Ashland now.
Yeah, yeah,
Beautiful down there. Yeah.
it is. Yeah.
Um, and so you always wanted to be a filmmaker. I love that.
Yeah.
So this is not your first film. What other films have you done just recently? So
Yeah, yeah. So I've done a lot of short to long short documentaries.
Mhm.
36 minutes-ish is how most of them have been. And I did one of the further in the past, but not that long ago, documentaries I did that I was talking about was called The Separation Myth, which was about the history of Oregon and its current impact on people of color in the state. And then I did a film called The Walls We Create, which is about a mural that happened down here in Southern Oregon with our sister city of Guanajuato, Mexico. And it really brought the community together around this mural. And during a time when there was a lot of discussion about walls being built to separate, this was a wall that was created and beautifully muraled to unite cultures and people. So focusing on that. And then a more recent one I did was called A Hurricane with Fire, which was about the fires that happened down here in Southern Oregon
Mhm.
that destroyed almost 3,000 homes of folks in Phoenix and Talent, Oregon,
Mhm.
and unfortunately really hit a lot of the low income affordable housing and also the Latino community. A lot of their housing was really impacted, where so many places we're seeing this, but people who are being disenfranchised or pushed out through gentrification then face the biggest impacts when it comes to climate catastrophe, and it kind of perpetuates all of that even more. So that film, I was here immediately after the fires happened, and so I was like, well, I have to start documenting this and talking to people who are on the ground and directly impacted for what their vision of rebuilding in a better way could look like that keeps equity in mind. Um, and now I'm actually doing a follow-up film that's in production about a really great project that's happening here to help with the fire victims be able to have home ownership in a truly affordable way. So that'll be coming in the next probably 6 months or so. And then this current project too, which we are developing out into a feature-length film from the
Oh,
short
okay.
film that's already produced.
Oh, right. I'm sure your mom has lots of stories to share for a feature length
She does.
documentary.
It's the tip of the iceberg, and there are so many other stories
Yeah.
too of women that she was in close, contact slash collaboration with, and everybody's getting older now, and so we want to make sure to capture their stories before they
Yeah.
are gone and be able to tell this bigger picture of how all over the state around the same time, even though there wasn't the internet like there is today,
Right.
women were doing the same things and being able to connect with each other and establish the battered women's movement.
Yeah. Yeah, I imagine. I mean, just watching your film and seeing your mom, I imagine you had a very inspired childhood growing up in a house with her. I mean, she just sounds amazing. And so, tell me a little bit about that. I mean, you said that she supported your film, passion for film, but what else? Like, how were you aware of what she was doing? Did she continue to work with this movement through while you were growing up? Tell me about that.
Yeah, those are great questions. I really do feel blessed to have been raised by a mother like her. And so I heard the stories from the time I was a young kid, and as much of it as was appropriate for the age that I was
Right.
at during the years. But at that point, she wasn't working in the battered women's movement as much as she goes into in the film itself. It was really hard for a lot of the women. They faced a lot of backlash and targeting, and many of them did get forced, really, essentially, to leave the country for a while or to escape or to take care of themselves in various ways. And so my mom did do that. And then she came back to the United States. And this was all before she had me. And she then moved into working with trauma healing and helping people in traumatic situations as a therapist and counselor, and also founded a healing and recovery center. And so she continued being in that line of work of helping people, and all of her work from the domestic violence prevention movement informed that deeply. And she found other ways to be able to move in that space and also stay connected with those that were directly working in the movement as well. But it was hard, and it was hard for a lot of people that we speak to currently too, of just how much backlash they faced and how intense it was, and what that led them to have to do to protect themselves. So yeah, growing up hearing these stories though, and also being around her when various storytellers and filmmakers would approach her and be like, "Oh, we have to make a film about this. We have to tell the story." She felt hesitant
Mm-hmm.
for many reasons, for layers
Yeah.
of reasons about how the story would be treated, as well as just speaking about it publicly again. So then, as my own film career evolved, um, it just came together perfectly to be the moment when it was the time to tell the story, and knowing that I would be the person to do that and handle it with the care it deserved. So
Right.
I feel lucky and grateful that we're able to collaborate in this way too.
Well, and timeliness. I mean, women are facing all kinds of things
Yeah,
now. And so I feel like the time is right to really talk about where we've been, how far we've come, and, how we can continue to move forward. Um, yeah. And so you've been sort of thinking about this film for a long time. And then you connected with Jessica Dougherty at Shrine 13. Tell me about that. How did you connect with Jessica and
yeah.
get her involved in making this film become reality?
Definitely. I mean, I really thank Jessica for being a big advocate of the film from the beginning and really helping to propel its forward progress. So we met at doc camp that happens up in
Okay.
Portland every year, and we met. I forget exactly what year it was, but it was shortly after COVID times. It was the first year that they came back after COVID times, and she was there with another project that she was working on. And there's this wonderful moment where everybody gets to pitch their projects and talk about what they're working on. And I was there talking about two projects I was working on, and one of them was this film in its early days of the concept of it. And so I spoke about that, and immediately Jessica came up to me afterwards and was like, "Well, tell me more. This is a really interesting subject matter and the personal connection and all of that." So we had a wonderful conversation about that. And a few years passed after that, and then we got back in touch about another thing, and then she was like, "Oh, well, where is that project that you were working on about your mom? Where is that in its stage of production?" And I told her, "Well, I've developed the idea out a lot more, and yet I'm still, trying to raise funding and make it happen." And very generously, she decided that she wanted to come on as the producer, and she had some grant funding that she was able to bring to the project too. So that really got the ball rolling. And I'm just so grateful to her that she saw the vision and believed in it. And so then we were able to go into production, and we did it down here in Southern Oregon.
Mhm.
And then we were able to receive a few more grants too for post production to finish up this short film. And now we've been in the festival tour phase of it, getting into different festivals and winning awards, which is so exciting.
Yeah.
And so, really, the doc camp, I tell all documentary filmmakers
Yeah,
in the Pacific Northwest now, I'm like, it's an amazing place. And I actually
it
got connected to my editor on the project too through Dot Camp. So
Mhm.
I recommend that to everybody as a networking space. And yeah, it felt really beautiful and full circle that we could continue to work together. And we went back to Dot Camp and showed the fuller pitch at its next
Nice.
stage once we had gone into production with it all. So yeah, I'm just so grateful. Jessica's been a wonderful ally on this whole project.
Yeah, yeah, and the dot camp is amazing. I mean, it's really a gem in Oregon
Yeah.
for documentary filmmakers for sure. Um, so so you filmed in Ashland. Did you you hired a crew then, or did Jessica
Mhm.
bring people to you, or is it people that you knew? Tell me about that process, sort of getting
Yeah.
your crew together.
What's amazing about Southern Oregon is even though it's a small town, there's actually a really vibrant film community here, which I've been involved with deeply through the years, living here, growing up here. So we have the Ashland Independent Film Festival, which is a really wonderful film festival. I was on the board of it for 2 years, and it brings a lot of film here. And then we also have Film Southern Oregon, which is an organization that's existed throughout the years, and they have a monthly event series where they bring together filmmakers, networking space. And so I know a lot of the local film crews down here and filmmakers down here. And so we were able to hire an all local crew of amazing, very talented, high end filmmakers that believed in the project because with documentary, especially when you're
Right,
relying on grants, you don't have huge funds to work with, but
right.
people that care about the story that you're going to tell and that are going to be the right fit are able to, yeah, be generous with their time, come in, we could pay them some, and then really make a project that I think we all feel extremely proud of. So, yeah, it was an all local to Southern Oregon crew. And then the editor and the post team, they were more distributed throughout the West Coast
Yeah.
mostly.
Mhm.
But yeah.
Yeah, I think networking is so important. I mean, you've been there, you've
Hmm.
grown up there and sort of grown up in the film industry because it's always been your passion. So for you, it's probably, natural to network with people
Hmm.
there and find those connections. But we have that in Portland too, where,
Yeah.
people just work together, they come forward, and it's amazing how everybody wants to help each other make their
Exactly.
film.
Yeah.
Right?
I
I
really
think,
love that about Oregon.
yeah.
I lived in New York for a while in the film community there, and then also spent time down in LA, California. And I feel like Oregon is really unique in how collaborative the film community is here and how much people want to help each other. It's not competitive, and really, I've been on the board of the OMPA, the Oregon Media Production
Mhm,
Association,
mhm.
for about 4 years now, maybe going on 5 years. And so yeah, it's something that keeps me in Oregon as a filmmaker is the energy of the film community in the state.
Yeah. Yeah. So were there any challenges that came up? I mean, it sounds like, things sort of flowed pretty well for you in making this film, but were there challenges that you didn't expect that sort of popped up you had to deal with?
Yeah, I would say with film, there's always
Yeah, I
challenges,
know.
even when projects run relatively smoothly. One thing that was maybe a little bit unexpected is that when we started making the film, it was quite a few years ago, and then seeing the shift in the political climate and how things feel a bit regressive in certain areas where
Mhm,
it's like, oh, we thought we were this far ahead, but now it's feeling like it's back here. And then the vulnerability that comes with that as being for my mom sharing her personal story, me as the filmmaker wanting to both like have her feel safe to share and like it's in a good container, and also being like, wow, things are uh, both always moving forward, but also feeling a little bit regressive right now,
mhm,
which makes the story that much more important
mhm.
to tell. And yet it does make it more vulnerable and scary sometimes to share too. And similarly, as we're building out this bigger feature length project with all of the participants that come on to be interviewed and whatnot, being able to handle these deeply personal and somewhat traumatic stories in a good way, which is one reason why for the feature length documentary, I've decided to do a documentary narrative fusion where we're having the actual interviews happen with all of the real people, but then having a narrative story as a through line to connect the points, to create a bridge into current days. What the main character, the protagonist in the narrative, is a woman that's working as a filmmaker, trying to tell this particular story, but having experiences in her own life of emotional abuse. So there
Mhm.
makes these bridges, and it also provides for spaces where if we need some anonymity or if we need some things to remain in the narrative space rather than the documentary space, we
Mhm.
have that flexibility. So I
That's
feel
really
like that
smart, I
is,
think, to
yeah,
do it that way.
exactly.
Yeah.
Right? Because it is like when you're talking about domestic violence and these
Mhm.
various things, anonymity and also just like trauma and the impact of that, I would say are big challenge points.
Mhm.
And with documentary, you are asking people to be vulnerable and share their stories, and so you want to have enough of that in there so it's real, but you also don't want to re-traumatize people, you don't want to endanger people, etc.
Right. Yeah. Now, have you, as you've been reaching out to these women, to tell their stories, has there been some hesitation then? I mean, is that sort of why you chose to go this route, or had you chosen this route before you started reaching out?
That's a great question. I would say that most women, especially from the 1970s, 1980s, when this movement was
Mhm.
happening in its grassroots way, are excited to share their
Mhm.
stories and to
Mhm.
get the story out there. So there hasn't been much resistance, um, and yet, we're also wanting to interview women and all folks that are working in the current domestic violence
Mhm.
prevention movement, at shelters, etc. And so I feel like that is another layer of why I wanted to do it this way, and to be able to tell all of the stories that are happening past and current and make that bridge, and then have some flexibility as far as if we need to make something in the narrative, then we can do that. And then also, because another hat that I wear for my career is as a technologist, I work a lot with AI, generative AI, emerging technologies. So I know a lot about what's going on as far as algorithms and deep fakes and
Mhm.
the
Right.
ability to track and monitor people. And
Right.
at our we did a screening up in Portland where we had a wonderful panel afterwards, with some local domestic violence prevention centers, and we asked them about, well, what are some of the current challenges that probably didn't exist back when my
Mhm.
mom was doing this work that you all are facing. And they really did speak to social media and how it makes it so much easier to find women that are in hiding, and the deep fakes and the
Mhm.
targeting of women. And then I've also been thinking a lot about the regressive thoughts that are being pushed to the younger generations
Mhm.
through social media and
Right.
through these very targeted campaigns of the manosphere, for example, which a
Right.
documentary just came out about. And so
Mhm.
it's like, how do we talk about both the history of what happened and then also where we are currently
Right.
in this technological age?
Yeah, there's so much. I mean, there are so many things that play into this subject. Um, I imagine it is hard to kind of stay focused on what story you want to tell. Have you thought about making it into a series? Like a, then and now sort of.
Definitely, yes. I mean, that's been kind of from the beginning a
Yeah.
thought, even before the short film, because there are so many stories there, even from my mom's time, of even her, just singularly her work in the movement. I'm like, that in and of itself could be a whole mini series that's like a based on a true story narrative treatment of that, because there's so much that they went through, so many characters, people, and their different lives and what they were going through. So that's a piece that I've already started writing, but will probably come down the road. And then, yes, even for just this then and now comparison, you're right that it can be a whole series. And Always funding is a big part of it when you're trying to tell stories and how to tell stories. I feel like doing the feature length documentary is the natural next step, and
Mm.
with each step there can be a broadening of the story and more can fit in. And then obviously with the constraints of length, with the feature length documentary, it's going to be the particular pieces that we can bring into that. And then hopefully, what I'm seeing is that just like we've seen with the momentum of the short film, then being able to carry us into the feature. I hope with the feature, then those story sparks that people get excited about in there can breathe out into an even bigger piece, too, of a series. So you're right, thinking the way I'm thinking. And
Yeah.
always, as a storyteller and filmmaker especially, it's the art of being able to tell enough of the story.
Right.
And especially with things based on true events, you can never tell it all. So you have to pick and
Right.
choose.
Well, and just with this subject, there are so many aspects. I mean, you could even go into. Are you passionate about supporting independent filmmakers and local storytelling? Become a sponsor of the Oregon Indie Film Podcast, where we shine a spotlight on Oregon's thriving independent film community. Our listeners are filmmakers, film lovers, and creative professionals eager to discover local talent and stories. As a sponsor, your brand will reach an engaged, creative audience that values community and authentic storytelling. Join us in celebrating Oregon's indie film scene. Let's bring your brand into the spotlight. Ready to partner? Let's talk. Hey there. If you're enjoying this episode of Oregon Indie Film, don't go anywhere. We've got more great conversation coming up. And if you believe in uplifting local voices and the power of independent storytelling, we'd love your support. Hit that follow button, share the show with a friend, or leave us a quick 5-star review. It makes a big difference. Want to get more involved? Reach out at OregonIndieFilm@gmail.com. Now, back to the episode. The psychology of it all, like why
Yeah.
it happens, not only the movement of helping women and protecting, the victims, but the other side of it too, like
Hmm.
what brings people to do this.
Exactly. Right.
Yeah, wow, so many thoughts, so many,
Right. And there
where.
is a lot of work being done in those realms too, and for men or anybody who is an abuser, helping them to look at their patterns, to look at their traumas, and to understand how to move in the world in a better way, like a rehabilitation of sorts. So that's a whole other angle that I am planning on bringing in some, but like you're saying, can be a whole story in and of itself.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, this piece super important, just the history of it all. And,
Hmm.
going back to telling the history, remembering the history, not losing the stories of the women who were the grassroots movement and who really brought it to light. I find it very interesting that in the 70s, like you mentioned, in the age before social media, before the internet, way before the internet, that there were these pockets of women doing the same work at the same time. I just find that very interesting.
Hmm.
Now with the internet, we're able to connect with people all over the world and sort of create movements faster. But yeah, the work that went into that is pretty amazing. Uh, so you premiered in November in
Hmm.
LA
Yes.
at the festival there. Was it the New Works Festival, New Film Festival?
Filmmakers LA.
New
Yeah.
Filmmakers, yeah.
Mhm.
And so you're just out there in the circuit right now. Do you have any other screenings that are coming up that you know about that you can share?
We do, yeah. We're in the Georgia Shorts Film Festival. That's our next one, which happens June 18th, 19th, and 20th. So that's exciting. I'm still deciding if I'm going to be able to make it out there, but
Yeah.
it's happening there. And then this just last month and the month before that, we had it show at the Lewis Weber Film Festival, which was in Massachusetts, and we won the best long short documentary category, which was awesome. And then the what is it called? The Through Female Eyes Film Festival. I might be getting the name wrong, but it's in Sarasota, Florida, and
Yeah.
we won an award there too, which was great. And so we are waiting to hear back now from some more festivals, so that'll probably be upcoming. And then we're also planning a screening down here in Southern Oregon in conjunction with the Ashland Film Festival. So sometime this summer, we're going to be having that. And then we're also now both in the film festival circuit as well as looking at various key places to show the film and
Mhm.
do what we did up in Portland, where we organize a whole event, show that film and potentially another short film that pairs well with it, and then have a panel discussion afterwards and bring the local organizations that are working in the domestic violence prevention
Mhm.
space to be able to discuss current resources and yeah, just again create that bridge between this story and all of the topics it covers and all of the discussions that it begins,
Mhm.
and
Mhm.
then talk to the people that are currently doing the work in the space, and providing an opportunity for the audience to deeply engage and ask questions and share their own stories. It's been such a wonderful way to share this project, and then also educational
Yeah.
distribution and uses to be able to have this in an educational space to spark conversation and again to teach history that is largely left out of our history books.
Yeah. Well, and not just educational, but also just maybe, inspiring victims who haven't been able to tell their
Hmm.
story.
Yeah,
Just, realize that, hey, I'm not alone and, start to heal by
yeah.
sharing their story too.
Yeah, we've had a lot of people after the film, as
Yeah.
happens, always come up to us and tell us, one, how important the film was, how much they appreciated it, and then relate it to their own experiences. And it's unfortunate and
Yeah.
amazing how many people are
Yeah.
impacted either directly or, by close association, by domestic violence and feeling that violence in the home and how horrible that is to
Yeah.
experience. So,
Yeah.
yeah, sharing this film and then providing the platform for others to feel safe enough to share their stories too is a big part of it.
Yeah, it's good. Good work. It's really important work. Um, and so as far as distribution, I feel I'm going to ask this question anyway, but I feel like you're probably waiting more for your feature to get developed before you really push for distribution. So, are you relying sort of on the festivals to be the avenue to get the word out about your film, or are you planning to do some sort of distribution? You know, I guess that's probably a question for Jessica too, but for
Yeah,
you, yeah, like
totally. Yeah,
yeah.
Jessica and I have been talking about it a lot, and she
Mhm.
has wonderful ideas as well. And it would be wonderful to have some sort of distribution for this short. I always joke that, like, if we could get on the airplanes, like American
Right?
Airlines or
Yeah.
something, that's
Oh,
the
I
best
know.
audience because they're just sitting there watching things. And I've seen some amazing films as
Yeah.
I've been flying from the West Coast to East Coast. So, yeah, if anybody out there listening has a connection to that, let me know. But in all seriousness, yeah, the film festival run obviously is a great place to get exposure for the film project. And then we have been talking to a few distributors. It is hard with short films,
Mm.
like there's not as much, and short documentaries
Right.
too. There's just not as much distribution out there and not as many avenues and pathways. So the intention with this project is, one, to have the really solid short film to begin telling the story, and then also to use that as a piece to fundraise for the feature length. Um, and we have plans to do, yeah, if we don't get picked up by a distributor, to do some sort of distribution ourselves too, and making sure that
Mhm.
it gets out there to enough places and seen by as many people as possible. As a filmmaker, that's always just your
Right.
wish, is that
Yeah.
it can reach an audience and reach the right audience.
Yeah.
So that's what I'm really
Yeah.
focused
I
on.
think, that was my next question. Like, what's your big goal with this film?
Hmm.
How would you measure success of this short film? Have
Mm.
you thought about that or yeah.
Yes, definitely. I mean, it's such a good question because, yeah, as a filmmaker, and especially in this day and age when there's so much content out there and it is
Mhm.
hard to get seen. But also on the flip side of that, there are so many more channels and pathways to have your projects seen versus when I was just starting out and there were a lot of um, obstacles to you had to kind of be in the know and you had to be in with the right people to get your film out there. Now social media,
Yeah.
etc., you can put it up for free and have many people see it. And so really success for me does look like this film being able to be utilized in the best ways possible to give hope to people in this time when things can feel hopeless and like we're
Mhm.
making steps backwards rather than forward. Encouragement and education for those that are currently working in domestic violence prevention spaces. We also, again, after the film, many times people who work in that space will come up to us and be like, wow, it's so wonderful to hear this history. I actually heard from, our person that was involved in the 1970s a very similar story. This is so encouraging. It shows us how, the movement can continue on. And then in a bigger scope, too, a theme in this film is about movements in general, movements
Right.
of progress
Hmm.
and
Yeah.
social change.
Hmm.
And for my generation and younger generations, because we're faced with so much, so many different areas, and also just the access to information, knowing how much is not going as well as it could, I feel like there can be overwhelm and a level of apathy that can come with that, of feeling like it's hopeless, of feeling like the
Hmm.
systems are so large that we would be coming against and so insurmountable. But by having this story and showing how, yes, there were just as big obstacles and systems to come and deal with. And these women who were doing it in a very grassroots way, who didn't have a bunch of money behind them, who didn't even have the technologies that we have nowadays, were able to make this lasting change. So, no, it is not hopeless. Like, there are templates and pathways forward that were laid the groundwork for it by our people that came before us, our elders. And so, yeah, that's a big part too of the success of the film. I feel like if it can inspire our current age of change makers
Hmm.
to keep going and to know that there are ways, strategies, and also just ebbs and flows to all movements, but the progress, the arc of justice, as Martin Luther King
Yeah.
said, right?
Yeah. It's
It's going
going.
forward, even
Yeah.
if it feels like it can dip or be hopeless sometimes. So,
Yeah.
yeah, so there's like, I know those goals are kind of large and I have the like very tangible goals of like how many people I'd
Right.
like to see and all of that, but at the same time if it's being seen by the right people, if it's really reaching the right audience and having an impact in their hearts and hopes, and maybe even people who are on the other side of issues, who don't, agree with certain aspects of what the
Right.
film is presenting, if it can at least open their hearts a little bit to another perspective, that's another piece that I always work into my documentary films. Is it's not just about preaching to the choir, but it really does have a potential through that human story to connect people across political divides where they might feel more defensive if it's just coming from an argumentative space or facts-based space.
Yeah. Well, and I think that's how we make progress,
Exactly.
is having the conversations and making the change. But I mean, it really is as simple as it can happen over a kitchen table. I think that's so important to point out that, you know, I mean, maybe today's kitchen table is social media, but still, one or two people who really believe in something can start to work on that, and other people will join in that
Mhm.
believe in it too. So it really does start simply and going back. It doesn't, you don't have to get overwhelmed, right? Like it is easy to get overwhelmed, especially, you know, in the recent past where it feels hopeless. I mean, I know all of us have felt that way recently where it feels like we've just gone backwards so far. But when you look at this, it's like, no, we've been there before. It's helpful to
Mhm.
know that, I think. So, yeah.
Exactly. Yeah, and to keep the spark of hope alive, to see how movements do have ebbs and flows, and even the pushback is actually a part of the movement itself, progressing forward. And yeah, just to keep moving forward. And that's we each have our unique ways that we're here to do that. For
Mhm.
myself, I feel like film is such a powerful
Yeah,
tool. And then also being in the technology realms, and obviously there's all the ways that AI and all these emerging technologies can be misused. And at the
right.
same time, I always like to encourage people
Mhm.
that it's a tool, and those same tools, like you're saying, can be used to organize, to spread good messages, to help the progress of our social equity move forward. And so, yeah,
Yeah.
each person is going to have their own unique way that they're able to make change and have an
Mhm.
impact in our
Yeah.
world.
Yeah. Very true. Well, and film is so important. It's such an important way to leave that lasting thing, right? Like you make a film and
Hmm.
it exists forever. So I
Exactly.
think it's a very important way to tell this type of story. I always like to ask this question of everyone, and I imagine that you probably already have an answer for this. But what is your big, beautiful dream? If you could do anything, money, time is not an object. It doesn't have to be film related. Just your big, beautiful dream for yourself. What would you like to see yourself doing?
Oh, I love that question. Um, Yeah, I think my big, beautiful dream really is about getting to continue to tell these important stories across mediums. Film is a big one for
Yeah.
me. Like I said, I also work with emerging and immersive technologies, and that's a whole other space to be able to tell more interactive stories. I write books too, so being able to do it in that medium. So there's so many ways that I love to tell story and to hopefully open hearts to change and to feeling inspired themselves for their own lives. And also, yes, just helping people because I'm raised by a trauma healing expert and
Yeah.
shadow work expert is what
Yeah.
she does as well. Helping people to heal the hurt and wounded places in themselves so that then they can move through the world expressing their unique gifts
Mhm.
and making a positive impact because I feel like that is truly how change happens. And like we saw in the film too, it's from many individuals finding their greatest creative expression
Mhm.
in whatever form that takes and then doing it. And by all of those people coming together, then it's not like, oh, well, it just has to be this one person in a position of power and leadership that can make the change in the world. No, the collective masses, the more that people can be healed and be doing their life's purpose work, the more beauty that we're going to see in this world. So, my big, beautiful dream is to be able to spread that message as
Yeah.
much as possible and to be able to, through my own unique gifts of storytelling and artistry, inspire people toward that. And if I can do that with my life, then I feel truly blessed and accomplished.
Yeah. I love that. I love that message. That's just really wonderful. And so what else are you working on? I mean, you have this, like I mentioned to you before we started recording, I attended a webinar that you did recently through Portland Startup Week about using AI
Mhm.
tools in filmmaking, and that
Mhm.
was very interesting. So do you have more of those coming up or um,
Yes, I do. Yeah, that's a whole area that I work in is with consulting and doing projects with generative AI and traditional filmmaking and teaching people about how it doesn't have to be a tool to replace creativity or replace artists, but really you can integrate it into your workflows to create even more creativity, even a higher production value, especially for independent filmmakers, but also brands and businesses knowing how to leverage the tools in the right ways. So I'm teaching a class at the beginning of June, June 2nd, in Southern Oregon on AI media making, and then I regularly do classes about that, both online and in person. And I have on my website, there's a page people can go to find out more about all that work that I do, as well as book me to teach workshops. I love doing it because it is the technology of the future. It's like
Right.
where we are right now.
Right.
And so
It's
being able
here.
to,
We can deny it all we want, but it's
yeah,
here. And I
it's
think
here.
as creative people, we will be far more effective knowing about it and knowing
Right?
how to use it for good instead
Exactly.
of just saying, I'm so dead against it and I don't want to hear about it. So, yeah.
Yeah, yeah, it's kind of like, photographers when Photoshop came out. Or I
Right.
remember for myself as a young filmmaker when we would film on the little mini DVs and then it all
Yeah.
became like SD cards and
Yeah.
digital. And I was like, I won't do that. That's not right. And then eventually it's like the way things move and progress. And
Right.
AI is different for
Yeah.
sure in just the scale of impact that it has. And yet, just like you're saying, it is a tool that can be harnessed for good.
Yeah.
And I love seeing creatives in the space using it in really unique ways. And you still use all your traditional filmmaking
Right.
technologies, practices, etc. And you're actually able to make just that much more. So that's, yes, that's a whole other area and a large piece of my work that I do. And I love talking to people about how they can utilize these technologies in their own workflow. Um, yeah, and so I have that. I have a few film projects that I'm working on.
Tell us about those. So you're working on the feature
Mhm.
to go along with this story, but what other films are you working on?
So, as I mentioned, I also have the film about the truly affordable housing for the fire victims that
Oh, right.
happened
Hmm.
down here in Southern Oregon, and it's a beautiful template of like again this microcosm of the macrocosm of what we're all facing with home ownership
Yeah.
and just like housing scarcity, etc., and looking at really tangible solutions and pathways forward and the way that we can set up systems to be fair and to let everybody have home because it's such like a base
Right.
need as a human, but many people and a lot of people in my generation and below, just that's a dream that's out of
I
reach.
know.
um, and then I have an artist series that I've been working on with different artists across Oregon and how, especially from marginalized communities, and how they express their identity and their creativity through their particular mediums like dance, singing, poetry, etc. So that's like a docu-series. And yeah, just the vulnerability of being an artist and exploring that tension between sharing yourself,
Mhm.
between being a reflector for the collective experiences and how you express through your artwork. So that's another project that is in the editing stages right now in post.
Nice. And so you're online, you have a website,
I
which
do,
is your
yeah.
name,
Yes,
nishaburton.com.
that's
Yeah.
it. Yeah.
And
And
I
there
will put that in the show notes. I'll put the link in there so it will be easy for people. But go ahead. There's what?
Yeah, I was going to say on that website you can find the different things that I do with
Mhm.
the emerging technologies and a lot of my films. And then also my Instagram I post
Mm.
to regularly, and my handle there is Nisha and then like the underscore under dash creating. So if you search Nisha creating, you'll be able to find me on Instagram too.
Right. And I'm sure there will be people that want to reach out to you, continue the conversation with you
Yes.
about your work, whether it's this film or your other work that you're doing. Is there anything else that you want to include or talk about that we haven't?
That's a great question. Well, I'll also say that just on my website, if people are specifically looking for more information about the film we've been talking about today, The film itself is called Over the Kitchen Table,
Mhm.
and on my website, in the drop-down link under films, you'll find the link to the Over the Kitchen Table landing page.
Mhm.
So then you can see more about upcoming screenings we have,
Cool.
how to donate and support,
Mhm.
or to, reach out if you have ideas about how, like, an organization that would be good to partner with, or a place to screen it, etc. All of that you can find, as well as a small trailer of the film itself. Um, and then, as far as anything else to talk about, I feel like we've had such a rich conversation and covered
Good,
so
good.
many areas. Yeah, I don't know that there's any final burning things except for that yeah, I feel really passionate about continuing on in this project in all its iterations, like we were talking about before, and getting to tell this story as fully as possible.
Mhm.
Um, and yeah, it feels like an exciting moment, even though it's a hard moment in many ways, culturally,
Yeah.
societally, etc. It does feel like there's so much potential right now too for movement, for change, for positive growth, and again with social media for being able to spread messages far and wide and raise awareness about things that people really might not know about unless they're directly impacted. So I I always think about, like what a time to be alive, what a
Yeah,
time to
yeah.
be on planet Earth. And it
Mhm.
does feel intense in a lot of ways, but also really inspiring and amazing because we have access to so much more than
Mhm.
in any other point in human history. So
Yeah.
it's incredible.
Yeah. And just to watch the evolution and the growth of all those things happening. For sure. Yeah. Well, best of luck to you
Thank
on this
you.
film, your feature, and all your other projects. You're doing some amazing work. I love what you're doing. And, deep respect to your mom for her work too. Yeah. So thanks so much for being here.
Yeah, thank you so much for the wonderful conversation, Don. It's been a joy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Thanks so much for listening. You can find more information about Over the Kitchen Table and Nisha's other films on her website. If you'd like to continue the conversation with Nisha Burton, reach out to her there, nishaburton.com. If you enjoyed this episode, please take a moment to share it with your friends. We'd love it if you could leave a 5-star review. Help us connect with more indie film lovers. Would you like to support the podcast by becoming a guest or a sponsor? Reach out at OregonIndieFilm@gmail.com.